Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into something that, let's be real, pretty much all of us struggle with at some point: studying. You know those totally exhausting sessions where you're just passively reading the same page over and over? Yeah, we're ditching those. Instead, we're going to uncover the actual science-backed secrets of active learning. So if you've ever felt like your study habits are just, well, not giving you the results you want, you are absolutely in the right place. Grab your focus and let's jump right in.
Okay, seriously. Why do we forget what we literally just read? It's the worst, isn't it? We've all been there. You get that agonizing frustration of staring at a textbook for hours, feeling like you're soaking up every single word, only to wake up the next morning and realize your mind is a complete blank. It honestly feels like your own brain is betraying you. But today, we're going to figure out exactly why that happens, and way more importantly, how to stop it from happening ever again. So, here's our roadmap for this explainer. First, we'll look at the mechanics of learning. Then, we'll break down the 4 learning styles. After that, we're covering universal memory-boosting techniques. And finally, we'll wrap it all up with the ultimate study formula.
All right, Section 1, the mechanics of learning. Let's look at how the brain actually processes information.
Look, if you want to fix a broken study habit, it really has to start right here. We have to understand what learning actually is at its most basic level. The source material defines learning incredibly simply. It's just how your brain takes in information, stores it, and uses it later. Simple enough, right? But here's the absolute key. You've got to think of your brain kind of like a fingerprint. Literally, no two are identical. So it makes sense that people don't all learn the same way. Forcing your specific brain to use the wrong study method, well, it's kind of like trying to plug a Mac charger into an Android phone. The connection just isn't going to happen. That's exactly why picking the method that actually clicks for you is so absolutely critical.
Moving right along to Section 2, the 4 learning styles. This is all about finding your perfect input method.
I want to pause and validate something for you right off the bat. If you've been struggling to remember things, I promise you it is not because you aren't smart. Not at all. You are very likely just using the wrong input method. Broadly speaking, there are 4 main styles out there: visual, auditory, reading/writing, and kinesthetic. And as you can see, each of these styles has totally different tactics and aligns way better with different types of subjects. Now, as we go through these next few points, I really want you to ask yourself, which one of these feels like my natural go-to? Look for the one that makes you say, yep, that is absolutely how I like to soak up information.
Let's break down those first 2. Okay, so if you're a visual learner, you process the world through your eyes. For you, a giant plain wall of text is basically your worst enemy. You're going to thrive when you take those boring notes and turn them into mind maps, or when you watch animated videos, or when you go crazy color-coding your formulas, red for this, blue for that. This visual style is just phenomenally effective for subjects like math, science, and biology. But wait, what if you're an auditory learner? Well, all those pretty colors aren't going to help you much. You need to hear it. You're going to understand things way better when you listen back to recorded lectures, or even just read your notes out loud to yourself. Debating topics with your friends is huge for you too. This whole speaking and hearing approach makes you basically a sponge for subjects like languages and literature.
All right, then we have the reading and writing style. If this is you, the magic really happens in the text itself. You succeed by taking concepts and rewriting them in your own words, creating nice, tight summaries, and just churning through written practice questions. This super text-heavy approach is hands down the best way to tackle theory-heavy subjects. Think history, English, business, stuff like that. Now let's totally flip the script and look at kinesthetic learners. You guys are all about movement. You're all about doing. You literally need to physically practice the thing. So your tactics are going to involve solving a ton of past equations or running actual physical experiments, maybe even building models. This hands-on approach is exactly what you need if you're tackling something like physics or chemistry.
Okay, let's jump into Section 3, universal memory-boosting techniques. This is how we make all that information actually stick.
So, taking the information in, that's really only half the battle. Now we need to talk about retention techniques. And the beautiful thing is, these work for absolutely everyone, no matter what your learning style is. Enter the ultimate antidote to cramming: active recall. The source defines this as literally forcing your brain to remember information instead of just passively skimming over it. In practice, this means you close the book, look away, and try to explain what you just learned completely from scratch. Or maybe it means using flashcards, where the question is on one side and the answer is totally hidden. You're actively, purposefully pulling that information right out of your head.
And here is the absolutely crucial point. Active recall strengthens your memory so much faster than just rereading. I really want this to be an aha moment for you. Think about it.
When you just reread a page, it feels super easy, right? It feels smooth. But listen, that ease is a total trap. It's an illusion. The mental friction, that actual struggle of pulling the information out of your brain, that very struggle is the exact thing that builds your memory muscles.
And honestly, that builds beautifully into our next universal technique, which is spaced repetition. The whole idea here is that you don't just learn everything once and forget it. You repeat it over time. Check out this timeline. You review after 1 day, then 3 days, then a week, and then maybe a month later. You can use simple revision schedules for this, or even awesome apps like Anki. Let me put it this way. Cramming the night before an exam is kind of like overstuffing a super cheap suitcase. I mean, sure, it might hold together for a few hours, but the second you actually need it to perform, the zipper breaks and everything bursts out in a huge mess. Spaced repetition completely destroys cramming because it forces your brain to recall the information right when it's on the verge of forgetting it. That is what permanently locks it into your long-term memory.
You know, there's a really famous saying, if you can explain it simply, you understand it. It's such a powerful philosophy, right? It totally shifts your mindset from just being a passive student to actually acting like a teacher. And really, it's the core of our next technique, which is pretty much the best way to test if you've actually retained any of the stuff you've been studying.
This leads perfectly into what's known as the Feynman technique. It's basically a teach-to-learn method, and it breaks down into 4 really straightforward steps. First up, you pick a topic. Easy. Second, you explain it out loud as if you were teaching it to a child. Third, and this is the magic part, as you do this, you're inevitably going to stumble. You'll hit a wall, and that's great because it helps you identify the exact gaps in your understanding. Finally, step 4, you go back to your materials and fix those specific gaps. When you try to explain a really complex idea to a kid, it instantly, and brutally honestly, exposes what you don't actually know yet.
Okay, our last universal retention technique is called interleaving. Let's look at this comparison. Instead of doing the traditional thing like studying math for 3 grueling hours straight, you mix it up. You do a little math, then you switch gears to physics, then over to chemistry. You're constantly mixing up different topics and problem types. Now, why on earth does this help? Well, it essentially trains your brain to quickly choose the right method under pressure. And if you think about it, that is exactly what you have to do in an exam setting, where the questions are completely randomized.
All right, section 4, the ultimate study formula. Let's bring this whole thing together. So here we are, the grand finale of our explainer. This is where we take your perfect input style and combine it with those universal retention techniques to create one incredibly actionable master routine. If you want a seriously powerful study session, you just need to combine these 4 steps. Step 1, understand. This is your input phase. Watch a video, read the textbook, do whatever aligns with your specific style. Step 2, recall. Shut the book and test yourself. Force that active recall. Step 3, practice. Do those past questions and hey, apply some interleaving here if you can. And finally, step 4, review. Plug that new information into a spaced repetition schedule so you literally never forget it. This is just such a satisfying 4-part formula that shows you exactly how to structure your session from the initial, oh, I get it phase, all the way to long-term mastery.
To wrap things up, I really want to leave you with a quick question to think about. Which technique are you going to try tonight? You've got the science-backed tools right in front of you now. So I'm challenging you. Ditch those old passive reading habits and start applying this toolkit right away. Figure out your learning style. Test yourself with active recall. Or, my personal favorite, try explaining a tough concept to an imaginary child using the Feynman technique. Transform your study sessions, master your memory, and I promise you, the results are going to follow. Thanks so much for hanging out with me for this explainer. Now, get out there and test it out.